behavior, period.
And that's what led a lot of us to this, I think, is the personal experience of having our friends, either ourselves be sick or our friends be sick and dying, and nobody at any level appearing to care one whit about it.
We can learn skills that we've never learned before, and more important, that we could just create our place in the world, which is really what the Women's Building represented, the public center for women's culture.
2 bartenders were dragged through splintering glass. People were dragged out into the parking lot where the police cars were waiting. 14 people were arrested. At the Black Cat, which was a former bar, dates back to the 1960s. It's on Sunset Boulevard in the Silver Lake District of Los Angeles. I'm West Joe, and I was involved in designating this as a City of LA Historic Cultural Monument in 2008. On New Year's Eve of 1966, that's December 31st, 1966, there was a New Year celebration here. There was a live group, there were Christmas trees, and the LAPD decided to make a statement by sending in 8 undercover vice officers. And a few seconds after New Year's 1967, they started arresting the men inside for exchanging same-sex kisses. The Tavern Guild actually got a piece in the LA Daily Journal back in 1967. So we have a picture of the front of the building in 1967. And this is basically what it looked like, glass and the same sign that's up here now. So if you can imagine a New Year's Eve celebration, still with the Christmas decorations, right after midnight, everyone's kissing, and suddenly the cops start grabbing people to arrest them. The bar structure, the bar where you order your drinks, that is the same bar structure that was here in 1967. I think the accounts that I read say this is where the 2 bartenders were dragged through splintering glass. People were dragged out into the parking lot where the police cars were waiting, and 14 people were arrested here. After people think of this as a riot, that's not actually what happened. There was quite a bit of chaos and pandemonium, but I don't think people were arrested. They were mainly just, if you can imagine, you're at a bar celebrating New Year's, and suddenly people around you start being grabbed. You don't know what's happening. There was absolute chaos. So it's described as a riot or a confrontation, but actually it was just real panic over what people saw was an assault by the LAPD. A lot of people were very much angry about this. A lot of people saw this in connection with Ronald Reagan's inauguration. He had been elected the November before as governor, basically on a law and order platform, perhaps in reaction to the free speech movement at Berkeley, and also the riots which had happened here in 1965. So organizations organized a rally over here in the parking lot. There were estimated 300 to 600 people in the rally in the parking lot of the bar and walking up and down in front of the bar. It's probably the largest LGBT demonstration to be held in this country up to that point in time. People forget how difficult it was, in terms of not just the fact that same-sex relations were criminalized, but also, especially in Los Angeles, that there was tremendous harassment and oppression on the part of the LAPD. It was notorious for that nationally. That's forgotten, and we need to remember the people who were brave enough to come out here and demonstrate. And they were scared. They were scared, but they were also very angry. And it's important to remember that. And they probably shared a lot of the same emotions as the people in Stonewall 2.5 years later. You know, you can read about things in books or see videos, but having someplace, you know, something about touching a building or seeing how it really looked, it can spur your imagination and it can deepen your understanding about the significance, and hopefully that's what it does. People need to know where we came from, and LGBT people need to know this is one of the first places where people were brave enough to stand up. I get emotional about this. There's a natural human disposition to focus in on the star-studded places, the Stonewall Inn, which certainly deserves its designation as a national monument. Hopefully people will realize that the LGBT movement came about all across the country. It had humble origins, just like all of the other civil rights movements of the 1960s. It was not in fancy, big places. It started out, this was a working class bar at that time, and that's where it started. That's the origin of people's rights today. It came from places like this.
Came to the Women's Building in 1975 to join the Feminist Studio Workshop as a student.
I came to the Women's Building in 1977 to join the Feminist Studio Workshop, and I was here in various capacities until 1988.
Obviously, this is where I met Sue, and we've been together since 1979.
Sherry was the first person I met at the Women's Building, and we became best friends. And then finally, during Oral History of Lesbianism, we got together, and we've been together ever since. Judy Chicago started the feminist art program in Fresno, and then eventually decided with Sheila de Bretteville and Arlene Raven that they needed an independent place. And they were looking for a name, and one of the people found in an old antique bookstore a book called The Woman's Building, which was about the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And so they decided to take the name of that building to honor that tradition and to make it visible. And so they started the Feminist Studio Workshop, which was a place outside of a mainstream patriarchal-based institution.
We're in a downtown warehouse district, and we were one of the first arts organizations to move down here. But this building was built by the Standard Oil Company. In fact, above the door, there are the letters SOC for Standard Oil Company. And it was originally a gorgeous building lined with marble. When we moved in here, it had been used as a warehouse for years. The woman who led the renovation is a woman named Cheryl Swanick, and she was this tough, butch lesbian. She had painted all of her tools, the tools of the Women's Building, pink, which is something she learned from her father. If a man painted his tools pink, the other men on the job site would never steal them. One of our first jobs as students in the Feminist Studio Workshop was to completely renovate this building. We knew nothing about those skills. We didn't have them. We soon came to realize that it was an opportunity to be empowered, that we could learn skills that we'd never learned before, and more important, that we could just create our place in the world, which is really what the Women's Building represented. It's a public center for women's culture, that we live in a world that is very male-dominated, and the art world was certainly not serving us as women artists. We were very invisible, and that we could carve out this little space that would be our space, and not just our space privately, but our space publicly, to say, here's what we're making as women artists, come see.
Hi, can you tell me what Women's Building is? Sheila DeBrettville. She's one of the founding mothers of the Women's Building.
The Women's Building really was a place that innovated the kind of art that's very popular right now in the art world, a kind of art that has community engagement, art that has collaborative performance art groups like feminist artwork groups, Sisters of Survival, waitresses, issue-oriented groups. So much of the work that we were doing was getting our voices out and commenting on things, that if we could make posters, postcards, artist books, it was a way to kind of reach a wider audience. Thousands of women over the years came through this space, and they learned skills, but most importantly, I think they felt honored as women, that your experience as a woman was valid in a culture that doesn't always honor women's experience, doesn't really value just the creativity that comes from being a woman.
I think the Women's Building for its time was really unique because it had a space and it existed for so long. It became just a symbol of that movement, of that period of time.
Area.
The perfect spot, the perfect location, first of all.
It was. Remember how many people smoked back then? Cloud of smoke in the
And not just
courtyards.
tobacco.
No, it was wild. Here at the Great Hall, Long Hall in Plummer Park, this is where ACT UP Los Angeles held all their meetings. They organized, they planned, they pulled together for the events that, the demonstrations that led to the successes that were seen in Los Angeles and across the nation. We had density population, so sort of ground zero for HIV/AIDS back then. So having this space in West Hollywood, central in that way, was
Bus
so
lines
important.
right there and everything,
Yes.
easy to access. People forget what we were up against in those days. We had fights on a variety of levels, local, state, and national, around crazy things like Prop 96, which we lost. All that kind of stuff. We had to devote energy to all those things during those years. People wanted to pass laws against us, get us tattooed, all that sort of stuff. Just crazy stuff for people that were HIV positive and for people that have AIDS. Oh, here we are, back at the back. Yeah. Think about how this used to be set up. We couldn't smoke indoors, of course. I still
a lot of
smoke, yeah.
smokers.
We did a lot of
I know, a lot of smoking. But it's hard to imagine that the room would be so packed that we'd have spill out, and it would be packed out here as well.
that we had to affect policy somehow to make a change on a larger level for more people. And that's what led a lot of us to this, I think, is the personal experience of having our friends, either ourselves be sick or our friends be sick and dying, and nobody at any level appearing to care one whit about it.
We decided to hold the first national action here in Los Angeles, so ACT UP LA was the organizing body of that action, and we held it over at the Westwood Federal Building. We had way over 400 people involved in that demonstration. People from all walks of life who showed up for this, not activists, who were willing to put themselves on the line. The energy of that demonstration was intense because of everyone's fear of what was happening. And that not only put Los Angeles on the map on a national scale, but it moved the whole dialogue from separate groups from separate cities to this is a national movement. And it's astounding how much we did. And
We really changed things. ACT UP and the people involved in AIDS in those days really changed how things are. I think there'll be health care before ACT UP and there'll be health care after ACT UP. That we really changed how things are done across all diseases.
And it's so important to have a meeting space like this that people could come to and they can have discussions and try to affect positive change as well.
And we believe history was made here.
Yeah.
And that's a decision to be left up to other people, I guess. But for us, our history was made here.
No, I disagree. History was made here, period.